So, we're back here again. The release of the latest season of the largely disappointing sequel spin-off to the How to Train Your Dragon franchise, Dragons, The Nine Realms. And I'll just take you back. When this thing was first announced, to say I was not very hyped up for it is a bit of an understatement, like a massive understatement. It felt like a worst-case scenario, a modern take on the Dragons franchise that just seemed utterly and solely determined to do everything wrong at every turn. The characters felt like bland knockoffs of the original group from Berk, but far more annoying than they ever were. The dragons were less exciting for the most part because there are some serious exceptions. Feathers, for example. I love feathers. And the setting was not really used to its optimum. In the original, they had age-appropriate technology that enhanced their dragons. Here, they have a tablet to make motion sensors, but not much else. I feel like they could do more to take advantage of the setting that they've chosen, the modern day. But they don't. And on top of that, the character arcs are weak, the narrative development's lacking, and the general script and dialogue pretty cringy. And so all in all, it has been a poor show and lacked much of a draw for me. But since I'm a glutton for punishment, I figured I'd strap myself in and watch season 5 regardless, so at the very least, I'd be able to complain about it online. And so I did just that. And you know what? Whilst I was very eager to rag on the show from the moment it dropped, I've come away a little bit disappointed in that regard. Because yes, whilst the season was not perfect, and I mean not perfect at all, I think there have been a lot of improvements across the board as well. And isn't that just the way for Dreamworks TV shows? The first seasons, they're pretty rough, and then slowly but surely, they start to find their feet. I mean, look at the recent Kung Fu Panda show, The Dragon Knight. That first season, woohoo! That was bad, truly god-awful if I'm being honest with you. And whilst the second season did not set the world on fire either, it was far better than I expected it to be. And I think it's much the same here. We didn't exactly get a whole heap of episodes, so I can't really tell if this was an actual true success or whether it was a small fluke, but the season was decent and engaging. I had fun watching it, and it did feel like it addressed a number of the problems that were prevalent in the early seasons. Didn't do it perfectly, and there's still far more to do, but it is a good first step after a couple of seasons of mediocrity. So yeah, let's get into it. In terms of the overall story, this season largely revolved around Tom's attempts to make his mother engage with the dragon world, an attempt to convince her to allow him to continue to participate as a dragon rider after she discovered the secret of the Dragon Club at the end of the previous season. On top of that, the team also has to continue to dodge the insane lumberjack buzzsaw and continue to hide the secret of dragons from the rest of the parents and the company which owns and operates the research facility. And on top of that, there's also the continued quest to find out information about Hiccup and his connection to Tom, and so after a series of adventures, and the continued insistence of his friends and his mother, that the secret of the dragons has to come out and that the other parents deserve to know about the secret due to the risk it poses their children, the secret does come out in the closing moments of the season, priming you for an explosive 6th season, whenever that releases. And honestly, those are a lot of story threads for 5 episodes, 6 episodes, something like that? And somehow, they actually managed to make it work for the most part. The story flows well, the actual storylines for each individual episode make sense and are engaging to watch, and honestly there's just so much less cringe in the episodes. So much less cringe in the character dialogue. It isn't perfect yet by any means, but it reminds me a little bit more of the older Dragon shows, where each episode still had its own little mini stories and arcs, and yet there was still an interwoven narrative threading all of those episodes together. Beyond that, I think the thing the show handled the best this season was the individual character arcs and the character personalities. Of particular note is our main protagonist, Tom Cullerson. One of the big issues with Tom's character in the previous seasons was, well, he was a tad arrogant. A very self-righteous know-it-all who always believed he was right, that he knew the dragons best, and was the only one who should be making decisions for the group as a whole. And I'm not saying that's bad characterization. In all honesty, it is actually refreshing to see a main protagonist that has such obvious and glaring flaws. It's rare to actually see this. But the main problem is that Dreamworks doesn't treat him like he has these flaws. We see them, of course, but in the end, the narrative in the show treats him like a necessary evil for the team. It's like, yeah, the dude's controlling and annoying and all of that, but it's justified because in the end, he's always right, and he's always going to be the one to save the day, whilst his team stands around like a bunch of idiots. And thus, it feels like the show legit thinks he's the best, and it's kind of frustrating and not very compelling to watch. A flawless character is a boring character. But a flawed character who succeeds at everything all the time and is always right, that's even worse. And that's what Tom was. But this season, I do feel like this was somewhat addressed. Whilst he did keep those flaws of thinking his way's the best way and that he's always right, in a lot of episodes this season, it's clear that he's actually wrong, and that he isn't the font of all dragon wisdom, but a teenager who's a little too self-assured and who makes a lot of mistakes. Someone who struggles to see things from another viewpoint other than his own. And at the same time, his sidekicks, they also improved. His annoying pseudoscience love interest, well, there was a lot of the stupid bullshit cut out of the show, and it's nice because the show was actually expecting me to take her seriously before this. But I couldn't. Come on now. Alex was less grating, and D'Angelo was way less preachy and cringy. I mean, he still was cringy, but less so. Hell, even Eugene, who was probably the best of the side character dragon riders, he was better too. And they even gave him a few more wholesome vibes from when he was interacting with his sister that rounded out his character. And these are good changes because, you know, I'll be honest, these side characters don't really hold up well compared to our classics. So they dialed back on those annoying traits and made them a bit more generic, but I think it was a good move. I'd rather have slightly bland and boring characters than characters that I cannot stand and yet are shoved in your face every second. But I think the best change we've seen from this recent season is the rise of Dr. Cullerson as an important character. Previously, she was a side character at best, and I mean that, at best. She did nothing, and she hardly interacted with her son beyond tossing out the occasional pat on the head or boyo or a very, very short-lived scolding. That's all she was, a plot device, not a character. And honestly, because of that, she felt very negligent and stupid, along with the rest of the parents, as they're somehow unable to notice that their kids are disappearing from the facility for hours at a time. Do these kids not have a teacher or something? Do they not have to attend school or tutoring? Are they seriously just all unsupervised for the majority of their lives? That can't be good for their learning. And so it was nice for her and Tom's relationship to come to the forefront this season. And best of all, it was nice that her character wasn't just there, not there to be a lackey or a yes man just for the sake of it. She doesn't act out of character. She learns, she disapproves, she sees how special the Dragon Rider bond is and the good that Tom and Thunder can do together. And then her scientist mode kicks in and she wants to engage with Tom about the dragons and learn as much as she can. And she even goes with him into the Dragon Realm and has some adventures once or twice. But they didn't just make her subservient to Tom, to fall into that trap of Tom is always right. They made her an actual character. She's real. She's the driving force behind Tom and the other kids having to tell their families about the existence of dragons. Because ultimately, they do deserve to know about what their children are getting up to, and it wouldn't be fair for them not to know while she does. And in this way, not only did she become a three-dimensional character, but she also became a gateway for a lot of character development for Tom, who was at last confronted with a problem that he alone could no longer solve. A problem that was no longer his way or the highway. And it was very compelling development for him. And it sets him and the rest of the Dragon Riders up for the future really well. And so, yeah, a much improved season. It's taken them some time to find their groove, but they have improved it. But that being said, there is still a long way to go to live up to the old Dragon shows, because, you know, those are just classics. So good luck with that, I guess. And so with all that being said, I will just remind you that these have just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the latest season if you've seen it? You like it? Hate it? What do you think they could improve? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know.